Hello everyone, I've been waiting since about summertime to shoot this video. We're now approaching kind of mid-December here in the UK, and winter is well underway, as well as kind of Christmas kind of preparations. So there's lots of kind of more interesting kind of nighttime compositions around in this part of the world at the moment. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to put in some Ilford Delta 3200 into one of my cameras. I did shoot this video around this time last year, where I kind of was looking at what Kentmere 400 pushed to 1600, so pushed 2 stops, and then equally pulling some Ilford Delta 3200 I had lying in a drawer, which was well expired, back from its block speed of 3200 to 1600. And it didn't turn out too well for the Delta compositions, because the roll of film I was using in that video was very expired, and I had no kind of idea how the film was kept, because it was kind of a roll of film that was given to me. So this time around, this is a fresh roll of Ilford Delta 3200, bought, like I said, earlier in the year, and it doesn't expire until next year. So that leads me on to what camera I'm going to be using this film in to today. I was hoping and there is one of the reasons why I bought this particular camera for, which is this one here, the Konica FS1. I've just attached its kind of battery pack at the moment, because it's never a good idea, I think, to keep batteries in a camera when you're not using them for large periods of time. Yeah, so anyway, I was hoping to put the Delta 3200 into this camera, because this camera does in fact allow you to go up to 3200. So I was really looking forward to giving it a whirl in this camera. But if you've been following my channel, I've had a bit of a bumpy ride with this camera. I'll put a link to this video here when I took this down to Abbas, and I really had some struggles with this camera, and I think I'm going to do another video in the future on this camera, because I did manage to kind of get it working a little bit more consistently, but I'll talk about that in a future video. But even though I think I've got this camera working again, I still don't kind of trust it with kind of some expensive film like Delta 3200, where I think this cost me about £8 a roll. So I was going to just put in a cheap roll of HP5 Plus in this, just to make sure it's working as it should. So that kind of left me with very few options on what camera I was going to use with this film. And I know there's going to be people out there and say that this isn't really a true Ilford Delta 3200 film, but because it's the first time I'm going to be using it as such, I do want to kind of try shooting it at its box speed to see for myself what happens, basically. So looking at my cameras, currently probably the only 2 cameras I've got that go up to ISO 3200, not including the Konica, is probably this one here, which was a Canon SureShot 85 given to me by my parents back in the year 2000. And I'm not going to use this one just yet, because it's still got some old filming from when I last used this camera, and I want to kind of finish that up before shoot with that camera again. So that pretty much just leaves the Olympus AF-1 Mini. So let's remove the sellotape, which is keeping the battery door shut. So battery. Yep, and there we go, the camera's still showing it's working. Another good thing with these point and shoot cameras is they do kind of automatically load the film when you put in the film. So let's give it a go. So let's put that over there, like so. And then I think you just put the door down and the camera does the rest. it's showing error actually. Yeah, thankfully it hasn't spooled on correctly, so I'll just move the film on a little bit further. Yeah, there we go. Right, so if I close it now, hopefully it should do the trick. Oh, still showing E. What's going on here, film? Right, YouTube saves the day. Basically, it looks like I was trying to feed too much of the leader into the kind of the camera. It just needed enough just to kind of catch the other side, close the door, and then that's done the trick. And the camera, if you can see that, is now showing kind of 1 in the dial ready to go. And because this model is the one that has DX coding, so it should hopefully have picked up the correct code for the Ilford Delta 3200 film. So when I go out and hopefully compose my images, it should expose them correctly. Fingers crossed. Yeah, so they were some of my favourite images from that roll of Delta 3200. And to be honest, I'm really surprised looking at the negatives when they kind of developed after 14.5 minutes in the lab box, how well they kind of came out, because the negatives themselves were very kind of thin, but thankfully the kind of the camera and then the kind of the processes on the computer have managed to kind of pull out all of that kind of detail in the negative in order to render well the majority of those images that I captured. I'm really surprised, having initially looked at that I managed to have the ability to actually choose favourites. Obviously, you've only just seen about a dozen or so of my kind of favourite images. There was also some, and I'll put them up now, where they just didn't work. Either it was kind of too dark for the film or the camera to kind of capture correctly, or where the focus, for whatever reason, just didn't kind of work. Or maybe I just kind of tried to capture a scene that I thought looked good, but in the end just didn't kind of work out on the night. So comparing these images with the ones that I took last year, albeit on the kind of the expired Delta 3200 film, I'm much happier with how these turned out this time around. So it definitely can help having kind of fresher film, especially like last year I didn't really know how it had been kind of kept, because I've used expired film before, which has kind of turned out okay, but this stuff was probably the first time that it kind of didn't work out so well, and out of kind of a roll of 36 kind of exposures, probably only half a dozen turned out reasonable. You know, it's hard to say that they were any good, but and hence why I only had kind of 2 or 3 to show you at the start of this video, and I put them up again now. But obviously I think anyway that this time this roll kind of worked a lot better. Yeah, so I'm not completely sold on the look of the film, and my favourite image, which was taken of Sherborne Mill during the day, I probably could have achieved a similar kind of look and feel to the image with kind of other film stock, such as Ilford's HP 5 Plus. Yeah, I also found that the digitisation process took a little longer to get right compared with lower ISO films that I've developed. Yeah, so it took a few different tries to get the exposure of the negatives just right at the camera scanning point, and then determining which option in the tool I use in Photoshop to invert the image. Then of course it took a little bit of fiddling with the black point levels in Photoshop to get the image close to resembling a kind of baseline in which I could then apply my final edits to in Lightroom, and then also in Photoshop as well to get rid of some of the worst kind of film diatrus, which was stuck to the negative either from the development process or the drying process. This was then repeated for a further 37 exposures, often multiple times, whilst I was trying to refine and get the exposure of the negative just right. So yeah, that took quite a while. Yeah, I'm still not convinced on a few of the edits of those negatives, and I think it's probably I got the feeling it's probably a problem with the way that the camera was trying to expose for a scene. If it was particularly dark, I did find that the camera probably boosted its exposure to try and capture the scene, and I felt that made it very difficult to then almost bring the lighting levels back down in the edit process to get the image looking right. And I'll put a couple of images up now showing you where I probably didn't do a very good job of this, because it's very bright looking still, so I probably haven't got the black point levels correct to make the best of those images. But because they're not my favorite images, I'm probably not gonna bother re-editing those images, because I've already selected my favorite ones from this batch of film. If I was to try some more Delta 3200 film, I think I'd rather try it in a film SLR next time rather than an automatic film point and shoot camera, just because I feel that with the extra controls that an SLR has, I'd be able to better control the exposure of the scene in the given light at that time, rather than just relying on the camera's automatic metering system. But whilst I'm really happy with how some of the images turn out in terms of the mood, the atmosphere, and the gritty character that the film was able to extract from a scene, I don't think I'm in any rush to try the film again anytime soon, as I did find that this film is particularly hard to get right, and then also to process the images to how I would want them to be processed. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed this video and the images that I was able to capture this time around with Ilford's Delta 3200 and the Olympus AF-1 Mini. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.